Here we're giving you even more ways to listen live. We're launching our brand new YouTube channel where you'll be able to watch all your favorite presenters and shows in real time. You can even watch from your smart TV. So head over to our YouTube channel, Ramadan FM, and click the subscribe button so you never miss a thing.
For a list of all our sponsors, please visit ramadanfm.com.
Ramadan, 87.9 FM.
Salam guys, welcome to Reclaim Your Heart, the book review with your host Habiba Selim. Assalamu alaikum everybody. I'm in shock that this is our final show of Ramadan of this month, and I really hope that people have enjoyed this show and listening to this book review from Yasmin Mujahid. I know I've personally enjoyed making it, rereading this book, falling in love again, because it is a timeless book, and really and truly you can never have enough of it. So I myself definitely have learned and regained the gems from this book, even just simply doing this book review, because I think a lot of the time, especially in Ramadan, people are working, and it's hard to kind of focus on this ibadah, on this remembrance of Allah, whilst being tired and fasting, and being really exhausted and having to work, and having some people who are going to school. So I hope really this show has helped in that sense. And I just for the final show, I was really confused as to what to do or what to wrap it up in. But I thought a continuation from last week on the topic of trials and hardship, just to see the end of this topic, and to see the end of this topic through, just so we can really understand, having understood from the first sort of episodes about love, commitment, attachments, where to put them, to kind of now having this holistic view of having these two weapons almost, of knowing where to put your love and attachments, and then knowing what to do if they have been misplaced. And hopefully this formula is what is going to keep us steadfast, keep us on the path to a better life and to a better connection with humanity and with our Creator, for the next Ramadan, inshallah. And essentially that is what Ramadan is all about. It's energizing ourselves, fueling ourselves, bettering ourselves for the year to come, right? And just for those who hadn't listened, or who didn't really attend, or know what I'm talking about when I'm saying hardships, last episode we had a look at trials and tribulations, and how does one go through these trials and tribulations as a believer, as a Muslim. Because it's all good and nice saying have trust in Allah, believe in Allah, don't put your trust anywhere but Allah. But as humans, we are inclined and we will mess up to put our attachments in the wrong places. So this chapter and this section, this topic, I believe is very important, because it shows us and it helps us, gives us a practical formula as to what to do and how to overcome this misplacement of our attachment and our love. So the chapter we're looking at today is titled The Dream of Life. And from last week, just to recap, we were looking at the trials and tribulations of our forefathers, and specifically we're looking at Asya, who was the wife of Pharaoh, and how she smiled in the face of trial and in the face of tribulation, and how confusing that must be, and how how can one smile when she essentially was being tortured by one of the worst tyrants of the world, right? And she smiled because she saw and believed and envisioned her home in Jannah, in this world, and her eyes and her focus was set on that. And therefore it made all the trials, all the tribulations that she was experiencing, that she was going through, that much more bearable, and she was able to smile in the face of her hardship and in the face of adversity. So continuing on from that, let's have a look what Yasmin Mujahid has to say moving on from that sort of recap. It begins with, "It was only a dream. For a moment, it overtakes me. Yet the suffering I feel in my nightmare is only an illusion, temporary, like the blink of an eye. But why do I dream? Why do I have to feel that loss, fear, and sadness in my sleep?" On a greater scale, it's a question that has been asked throughout time, and for many people, the answer to that question has determined their path to or away from faith. Faith in God, faith in life's purpose, faith in a higher order, or a final destination has often all rested upon how this singular question has been answered. And so to ask this question is to ask about life in the most ultimate way. Why do we suffer? Why do, quote unquote, bad things happen to good people? And how could there be a God if innocent children starve and criminals run free? How can there be an all-loving and all-powerful deity who would allow such misfortunes to happen? And if God is indeed just and good, shouldn't only good things happen to good people and bad things only happen to bad people? Well, the answer is yes, absolutely. Only good things do happen to good people, and only bad things do happen to bad people. Why? Because God is the most just and the most loving, and he has no deficiency in his knowledge or understanding. So just before I continue, I'm sure everybody, listening, the whole world essentially should and is listening. And we know that the absolute atrocities that are going on currently in Palestine as we talk, and just currently around the world, there's suffering existing everywhere. The Muslims are suffering, humanity is suffering. And so I thought this would be a very appropriate topic to talk about, because as a community, as people, I know I've spoken to friends and family, it's a very heavy and a very hard time for humanity right now in this world, and in what's going on in the current affairs that are happening with the atrocities that are being committed specifically in Palestine right now as we speak. And it's very hard to make sense of it. It's very hard to understand. And I think it can also cause a lot of tribulations in people's faith and in people's religiosity, because just like the exact questions that Yasmin Mujahid mentions, why is this happening? How is God allowing this to happen? Why is our innocent children being killed? And, what have they done wrong? These are good people, good humans, yet they are essentially getting the most horrific things happening to them. And actually, I had the privilege of just returning from Lebanon a couple of weeks ago, and I asked myself the exact same question while out there. And not just that, but also the question of why me? Why do I get to live a comfortable life? And why do I get to live a good life, quote unquote, good life? E.g., I have a roof over my head, and I have family, and I have a bed, and I have safety and security, and other people in the world are living in that. So I think this topic is very relatable and a very important topic to be discussed, because especially now more than ever, suffering is worldwide, and suffering is at our doorsteps with our Muslim brothers and sisters all over the world, and even in our back homes. Illnesses, diseases, corona, all of these things have really affected human beings from all walks of life, all types of religions. And therefore I found it very fit, and I found it very becoming to speak about this topic today, just to sort of try and find some solace, and try and as for those listening, and for me even speaking, to try and make sense of it as much as we can. So let's continue. The problem is that we have deficiencies in knowledge and understanding. See, to understand the statement, only good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, we must first define good and bad. And although there are many definitions of good and bad as there are people, a comprehensive understanding does exist. For example, most people would agree that to succeed in achieving my desired purpose or goal in a particular matter would be good, while on the other hand, failing to achieve my intended purpose or aim would be bad. If my aim is to gain weight because I am dangerously underweight, becoming heavier would be good. On the other hand, if my aim is to lose weight Because I'm harmfully overweight, becoming heavier would be bad. The same event could be good or bad depending on my intended purpose. So good in my eyes rests on the achievement of my personal aim, and ultimate good rests on the achievement of my ultimate aim. But what is my aim? That brings us to the fundamental question of purpose as it relates to the greater reality of existence. There are essentially two distinct worldviews when it comes to the purpose of life. The first worldview holds that this life is the reality, the final destination, and the ultimate goal of our endeavors. The second worldview holds that this life is only a bridge, a means that stands between as nothing more than a glimpse of a context into the context of God's infinite reality. For those in the first group, this life is everything. It is the end to which all actions strive. For those in the second group, this life tends towards zero. Why? Because in comparison to infinity, even the largest number becomes zero, nothing, like a fleeting dream. These distinct worldviews directly affect the question of purpose. See, if one believes that this life is the reality, our final destination, the goal of all our endeavors, the purpose of life would be to maximize pleasure and gain in this life. In that paradigm, bad things are in fact happening to good people every single second. Without the paradigm, people reach the conclusion that there is no justice and therefore either there is no God or God is not just. Wa'udhu billah. It's like a person who concludes that there must be no God because they had a bad dream. But why don't we give the experiences of our dreams much weight? After all, those dreams are horrifying to live. Horrifying to live through, and very often do happen to good people. In our dreams, do we not experience extreme terror or bliss? Yes, but why doesn't it matter? Because put into context, in our real life, it means nothing. In the second worldview, which is the Islamic paradigm, the purpose of creation is not maximizing pleasure and gain in a life that is nothing more than a dream. In that worldview, life's purpose is defined by God, who tells us, I have not created jinn and humans for any other purpose except to worship me. It is important to note that the special construction of this statement, it begins with a negation. I have not created jinn and humans. And Allah begins by negating all other purposes before he states the one and only singular purpose, except to worship me. This means that as a believer, I know that there is no other purpose of my existence except to know, love, and get closer to God. This is the one and only reason why I was created. And this is the most essential realization as it defines everything else I do or believe. It defines all things around me and everything I experience in life. So let's retract, right? There was a lot there and a lot to talk about. And I want to kind of break it down a little bit. So the first bit is essentially that we're presented with two paradigms, right? The one belief that this world is everything, and we die and we become nothing, and we go to dust, and this is it. This is our life, and we only get one of it, and we die, and that's all, and that's the end. Khalas, we die and we're finished. And that belief therefore entails an understanding that if bad things happen to good people in this world, there is just an infinite and unexplainable injustice that will never be explained, that will never be held account, and that will never be reasonable. There will be no one, able to hold someone to account because it's unjust. The law has failed them. The people has failed them. And that's it. It's unfortunate, and they die, and that's it. That's where it stops. And that not only creates a feeling of complete disparity, because it's an idea that if I get wronged, or if I wrong someone, if I can get away with it, then that is fine, and that's okay, and I don't need to think about consequences. I don't need to think about accountability. Therein lies then this belief and this notion and these understandings that then God must not be just, and God must not either, like I said, A'udhu Billah, one of the two. Either this world is not just, or God himself is not just. Or, the idea that bad things happen to good people, and in and of itself, that's a very unfair thing to happen, right? Then we look at the second paradigm, which is the Islamic paradigm. And the Islamic paradigm, which tells us this world is but a fleeting means to an everlasting and an infinite destination. And therefore, as she's mentioning, anything in comparison to infinity is zero. No matter how many years we live, no matter how many years this earth has existed and will continue to exist, in comparison to infinity, it's zero, it's nothing, right? And then she draws and goes on to look at the comparison of a dream. So when we have nightmares, right, and we wake up, are we completely debilitated by that dream, or are we able to differentiate the fact that that was a dream and this, when we're awake, right, is reality? This is what matters, right? When we have a dream, most people wake up, when a nightmare, you wake up and you say, thank God that was just a dream, or oh my gosh, I'm glad that was just a dream. Because you've woken up to a reality, a better reality, a more enduring reality that you're going to continue to live separately from that dream, right? And here is where I think it's very worth noting that once we can reconcile with this belief, and once we can reconcile with this idea that this world and justice and all these big, sort of themes that every world, politician is trying to make sense of, we're trying to better ourselves at being more just. All of these things are essentially limited and will essentially always be imperfect and will essentially continue to happen. Injustice will continue to happen however, wherever you go, because this world is completely fallible and completely imperfect. And does that mean that, like she said earlier from our last show, does that mean we don't stand up to injustice, right? That then poses the question, does that mean, like, why bother, right? Why bother protesting? Why bother going to court about a case? Why bother creating a ruckus or creating forms of resistance? Why bother if this doesn't mean anything? Well, no. Herein lies the hadith that explains to us, you do both. You tie your camel, then you have tawakkul on Allah. So we tie our camel, and in that is all these forms of protest and all these forms of resistance in their multiples, in dua, in the form of prayer, in the form of physical protest, in the form of writing to MPs. These are all physical, forms of fighting injustices, fighting evil that's going on in the world. We see something happening in front of us on the street, you will intercept and say, why are you shouting at this lady? Why are you hitting this person? That's your action. But then it doesn't stop there, because I think if we put all our efforts, if we put all our trust and our energy into activism and movements and all of this stuff, without the faith in Allah, without the belief that there will be justice served, that there will be a day of judgment where every single person, every single politician, every single leader, every single whoever is going to be asked and judged exactly at what their hands have committed, then there's a problem there. And that's why we need to have the balance of the two in order to survive in this world, and in order to make sense of evil, and in order to make sense of suffering in general, right? We need to have the balance. And if we swing either end of the extremes, you have not achieved anything of substance, because too much, going to the end of being fighting for justice and not having that tawakkul or belief in Allah and Allah's power and Allah's judgment and His justice, you will be completely despair. You'll be completely despaired, and you'll be completely disheartened, and the world will be a cruel, evil place. Then if we swing to the other side, and all you're saying is, I'm just going to sit in my room and I'm going to make dua, and if I see an injustice happening, I will just look away and say, Allah be with them. You're swinging the complete other end of another despaired and ineffective way of living and making sense of suffering. So where do we want to land? We want to land in the middle of being able, where we can and where we have accessibility to, fight and resist and call out injustices is as soon as we see it. But also in that middle ground lies having that tawakkul and having the belief that we will, you can never change the world as yourself, and all you can do and all your ability is and your power lies is in yourself and what you can do as you as an individual. Because I think that when we see so many of these stuff going on, you can become very helpless, and you can feel very out of control. You can't do anything, and that can make people be very apathetic. It can make people feel very what's the point, why should I even try, this problem is bigger than me, it's too big for me for me and I won't make a change, I won't have any effect. But no, our deen teaches us that it's that middle ground, it's that tying our camel and having faith in Allah. That is where the true power lies. We look at our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He fought battles, he went to wars, he led nations, right? And fought against injustices, fought against genocide and people trying to kill him and murder, the massacre the Muslims. Had he said, I'm going to turn to Allah and attack Allah and that's it, there would be no Muslim empire, there would be no Muslims left, right? But then that's where we learn that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had his heart with Allah, and that's what made him glorious and successful. Because whilst he tried his best to make sure his worldly affairs were intact and protected, and fought for what was right and stood up to get against injustice, and as I said, went to war, they jihad, they engaged in a fight in the name of Islam or in the name of Allah, because they had to defend their land or defend their territory. But they also had that trust in Allah, that Allah will protect us and Allah will serve every person their due right judgment. And I think that's where essentially a peace of mind essence comes into place, because you have both strengths, and when you find that middle ground with both of those strengths, you are able to be a lot more powerful, a lot more effective as a person in society. So let's continue with this chapter. Returning to the meaning of good and bad, we find that anything that brings us closer to our ultimate purpose is good, and anything that takes us away from our ultimate purpose is bad. In an ultimate sense, okay? In a relative sense, for those whose goal is this material world, worldly things define their good and bad. For them, things like gaining wealth, status, fame, or property is necessarily good. Losing wealth, status, fame, and property is necessarily bad. So in that paradigm, when an innocent person loses every material possessions they own, this is a bad thing happening to a good person. But that is the illusion that comes with the result of a flawed worldview. With the lens itself, when the lens itself is distorted, so too is the image seen through it. For those of the second worldview, anything that brings us closer to our purpose or nearness to God, God's love is good. And anything that takes us away from that purpose is bad. Therefore, winning $1 billion may be the greatest calamity to ever happen to me if it takes me away from God, my ultimate purpose. And on the other hand, losing my job, all my wealth, and even falling ill may in fact be the greatest blessing ever to happen to me if it brings me closer to God, my ultimate purpose. This is the reality that is spoken about in the Quran when Allah says, it may happen that you hate a thing which is good for you, and it may happen that you love a thing which is bad for you. Allah knows and you know not. So here is a very crucial point, and that's the worldview. And that's the lens we choose to look in and the lens we choose to live by. Because like Yasmin Mujahid puts, if our worldview is judged and measured by worldly gains and worldly materialistic possessions, the loss of those said possessions and those said materialistic gains is a calamity, objectively. In this worldview, objectively, these things are bad, and therefore, if they happen to good people, this is an injustice. That is one view. And there is some truth to that, you know? We would never wish any calamity, any illness on any human. So, you know, in fact, illness, death, all these crimes and atrocities are bad because they are things we're trying to eradicate. They're not good things, right? We don't want more of them. We're trying to get rid of them. So in their essence, in their nature, they are horrific and terrible things. ولكن, but how we choose to react and how we choose to respond to these atrocities, to these calamities, this is where it is not objective. This is where it is in fact subjective, and in fact our religion comes into the forefront. Because like Yasmin Mujahid is saying, if I believe and I have taken to the understanding that if I lose my wealth, if I lose my, fame, if I lose this, then this is bad, and then I'm therefore doomed. But if my purpose, if our lens that we are focusing on, that we are choosing to focus on, if that lens is in fact directed towards the ultimate purpose, and that in relation to that is God, this changes the entire situation, and it changes the entire perspective and worldview. And in fact, I can firsthand, vouch on this, because when I had that time, I'm privileged enough to be in Lebanon, speaking to the Syrian refugees on the border, I was in shock, and I actually was a bit not intimidated. I was not embarrassed. What's the word? I was a bit I can't find the word. I'm trying to think of the word, but I can't find it. I was ashamed. That's what it was. I was ashamed that I thought or felt bad for these people in one element of their life. And that element, which is where I was educated, my vision changed, was because I felt bad for them when they had a relationship and a better understanding and better taqwa, better iman with Allah than me. So rather, these people were way better than me in that specific element. Yes, in worldly elements, of course, without a doubt, having security, stability, home, family, alhamdulillah, these are things objectively are a lot better, and objectively are things that every single person as a human basic right should be allowed to have, and is their right to have. So in that element, of course, alhamdulillah, there's no discrepancy there. But that's not to say that they are solely defined by their worldly possessions, their worldly situations, right? Because if we take this first world view, which tells us that this quality of life and the quality of life of an individual is based on just these worldly possessions and these worldly elements, it completely disadvantages these people, even though they are a lot better than us. In many ways, they're a lot better than us. And in many ways, they feel bad for us. And that's where understanding the ultimate purpose, understanding the ultimate destination, this is where it comes into place, and this is where it's crucial, because these people have understood it. These people have grasped what this dunya means, and they know where they're heading, and they have the strongest connection to Allah and the strongest iman and taqwa, like Asiya, that even in their torment, even in the hell that they have been through, they see and look to their home in Jannah, and they can see their home in Jannah. Whereas me and you listening, I, can only speak for myself. There's so many things in this world that we are tested with that we don't even know they're tests. And so who am I to say, that they are less fortunate or they are worse off than me, when if we're judging it by ultimate goal, if we're judging it by the ultimate purpose, which is closeness to Allah, I can guarantee you they are doing a lot better in that department. A lot better in that department. And so this is where we need, I think, to reconsider, re-examine how we view the world and how we view and make sense of the world. And this is essentially what the whole book has been about, has essentially been the reality of the dunya and what it means, what it is, and those who have cracked that, those who have understood that reality of what this world truly is and truly means, are the happiest, irrespective of their environment, irrespective. The wealthiest person, and have understood this reality of the dunya, is just as up there, just as equivalent to the poorest person who has understood the reality of this dunya. Both are exactly the same in their quality of life. I'd go as far as to argue, because this is it. This is essentially what it is about, is knowing that the dunya is made up of many, many things, and not just materialistic and possessions. That's not what makes us and our quality of life worth living. No. That is not what makes the world and our value as humans and individuals. That is one element, but that is the element that society has chosen to focus on for a very long time, and we have neglected the focus and the reshifting of our focus in our homes in the hereafter. And we have completely neglected that, and we've completely fallen into the trap of being immersed in living in the now, living in the present, that we forget that this is not it, that we forget that this world is not it, and this world is never going to be perfect. It's never going to be permanent. And like I said, and I just want to all, and I'm making the biggest disclaimer that was never to say you're speaking to someone who I am, the university that I attend is known to be one of the most politically active universities, very politically active, very, 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 and that's so that for me, it's never to dismantle, discredit social movements and protests, because like I said, and I'm bringing it back to the hadith, it is a combination of the both. And we must use our limbs, use our voices, use our everything to fight injustice, and use our hearts to have taqwa in Allah. We use our limbs and our bodies and our voices for that, but our hearts have to be with Allah, and our hearts turn to Allah. And that's where I think collectively as a Muslim ummah, as Muslims in this 21st century, where we're witnessing atrocity after atrocity, Muslim brothers and sisters all over the world, I could go as far as to say Muslims are the worst people suffering in terms of, the religious groups. We are one of the worst currently. And so we have to focus our approach in terms of suffering, focus on trying to make sense of suffering in the 21st century, because unfortunately it's at our doorstep and we can't avoid it. And unfortunately, suffering now has become at our doorstep, and we can't keep ignoring it. We can't keep turning out a blind eye, and we can't keep, pretending that it doesn't exist, because it is encroaching more and more into our back houses, into our backyards. So we have to, as Muslims, understand what Allah tells us. How can we look to our Prophet? How can we look to our spirituality as a means of helping us in these times, not a means of pushing us away from it, not a means of, the two having to be independent factors, but how can we use our spirituality and our faith to aid us in fight of atrocities, in fight and in the face of injustice and crimes and just horrible things that are going on in the world. So I'm going to finish this chapter, but I'm going to finish it after the Asr prayer, which is going to go off very, very soon. And please do, make sure to come back and join for the second half. And this is going to be the final show of, the Yasmin Mujahid book. We're not even halfway through the book, and there was no way we were going to get through a significant chapter of the book, because we had 4 to 5 episodes, and this book is an endless gem, and filled with many, many wisdoms that we could not simply cover over this time. But I just want to continue with this idea of the world that we do live in, and navigating through the struggles and the pain and the injustices that we are seeing today. And like I'm saying, we have to really draw the links between faith and this. And the moment we start doing that, the moment that we come together and have a better understanding, then inshallah we will do a lot better as a community and as an ummah. So I am wary of the time for us. I think we're going to break up very, very soon. So please do join and come back because this is a very amazing topic and I can't wait to continue with it. So inshallah, after Asr prayer, I will be back and I will see you guys shortly. Assalamu alaikum.
Ramadan, Ramadan, Ramadan.
This Adhan is sponsored by Muslim Global Relief.
Where there is extreme poverty, there are always orphaned and abandoned children. Every 2.2 seconds, a child loses a parent somewhere in the world. There are over 200 million orphaned children worldwide. Muslim Global Relief provides education to help orphaned children develop the skills they need, making positive changes in their life and breaking them free from poverty. Awarded the UK's Best Muslim Charity of the Year. Make a 100% zakat donation. Visit muslimglobalrelief.org.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya 'ala as-salah. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته.
O Allah, owner of this perfect call and owner of this prayer to be performed, bestow upon Muhammad, peace be upon him, a high rank and a high station, and send him upon a praised platform in paradise. Verily, you never fail in your promise.
Ramadan, Ramadan, Ramadan.
German Doner Kebab wishes you Ramadan Kareem. Enjoy your doner after dusk with us and choose from the original Doner Kebab, the KKL, the Doner Crunch Burger, or perhaps the Boss Box and so much more. You can find your nearest GDK at GermanDonerKebab.com or bring the Ramadan experience to your doorstep by signing up for your Ramadan pack at RamadanTentProject.com. German Doner Kebab. Kebabs done right.
Allah has bestowed us with another Ramadan. Its days are the perfect time to help the suffering Ummah with our supplications and our charitable giving. Make the difference with UK charity Ummah Welfare Trust by supporting its emergency, development and Ramadan programs. We are part of the Ummah, and the Ummah is a part of us. So be generous and donate for our brothers and sisters this Ramadan.
Families Relief are working on a special Ramadan program that needs your help and support. Whether you would like to donate zakat, sadaqah, fidya or fitrana, your Ramadan donations will help us distribute food and clean water to impoverished families in needy countries like Pakistan, Yemen, Syria, Palestine and Africa. Help us to help them survive this Ramadan. Donate now on 0114 365 4454 or go online to familiesrelief.org.uk. Together we can save lives.
For a list of all our sponsors, please visit ramadanfm.com.
Ramadan, 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 87.9 FM.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back from the Asr break. I hope you guys are back and listening to a very, very interesting topic, one of my favorite topics and a very relevant topic, discussing injustices and hardships and how to deal and how can one navigate through in face of these hardships and these atrocities. So just before the break, we were looking at how there's two different worldviews that essentially exist in the world. One view whereby the world and this world that we are living in is the end and the and all and be all of everything, meaning that if injustices occur and if bad things happen to good people, then this is a doomed, reality, and essentially there's no justice. We were then comparing that to the other paradigm, which is the Islamic view, the Islamic paradigm, which tells us that essentially anything that draws us closer to Allah, anything that draws us closer to our Creator, which is essentially our purpose, is good, and anything that draws us away from that is bad. Therefore, using this as our compass, this as our starting point, reshifts and reconstructs many misunderstandings, many misconceptions that our world and society has told us alternatively, right? So I want to finish off this chapter and the next chapter as well. If we have enough time, we'll just go on to look at closed doors and what does that mean when we are rejected or turned away from something that we thought was good for us, which is, again, very, very relevant. Very, very, I'm sure so many people can relate to these topics especially. So that's kind of why I wanted to, end off the show, end off this series on these two topics, because like I said, this book is very good in making us understand and highlighting the dunya and what the dunya is and what it is in essence, but it's also very, very excellent at helping us understand how to deal and how to navigate through this reality. So let's have a look. As a believer, my criteria is no longer gain or loss in material sense. My criteria is something higher. What I have or do not have in a worldly sense is only relevant in as much as it brings me closer or farther from my aim, which is God. This dunya becomes nothing more than that dream that I experienced for a moment and then awaken from. Whether that dream was good or bad for me depends only on my state once I awaken. And so the ultimate scale there is perfect. In the ultimate scale, there is perfect justice. God only gives good things, which is nearness to him, to good people, and bad things, which is distance from him, to bad people. The greatest good is nearness to God in this life and the next. And it is only good people who are blessed with this. That is why the Prophet ﷺ said, strange is the case of a believer. There is good for him in everything. And this is only for the believer. If a blessing reaches him, he is grateful to God, which is good for him. And if an adversity reaches him, he is patient, which is good for him. As this hadith explains, whether something is good or bad is not defined by how it appears externally. Goodness, as explained by this hadith, is defined by good internal state that it produces, which is patience and gratitude, both manifestations of peace with no nearness to God. On the other hand, the greatest calamity is distance from God in this life and the next. And it is only bad people who are punished with this. What such distance people have or do not have of wealth or status or property or fame is only an illusion. No more real or important than having or not having these things in the greatest dream or the worst nightmare. Of these illusions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, nor strain your eyes in longing for the things we have given for enjoyment to parties of them, the splendor of the life of this world through which we test them. But the provision of thy Lord is better and more enduring. The enduring life is the one that begins once we awaken from this world, and it is in that awakening that we realize it was only just a dream. Really, really powerful stuff. Really, really amazing points here, and I want to kind of break them down. So she begins on by saying how the ultimate scale, the ultimate measurement of good and bad, how do we measure that, right? And I think it's a very much $1 million question. It's like saying, what's happiness, right? No one has found the solution. No one, atheist, non-atheist, any type of person in the street, if you go up to them and ask them, what's happiness? It will be completely different for every different single person. Same thing with good and bad. If you went to someone and said, what do you define as good? What do you define as bad? You'll have 1,000,001 different answers and 1,000,001 different explanations. So with this abundance of varying explanations, varying understandings, etc., it's kind of overwhelming, right? And it's very much, how do I choose? Okay, what do I choose from? Someone's telling me goodness is health. Someone else says goodness is education. Someone else says goodness is peace. Someone else. Where do you choose? Where do you draw the line? And almost titling and boxing goodness and bad is very limiting, because once I've achieved peace and I still feel sad, what then? Once I've achieved my amazing car, or I've moved into my dream home and I still feel sad, what then? So this illusion, this facade of happiness, contentment, peace, good, bad, these titles of things, right, are all essentially facades and all up for human fallibility, because that person thinks that's his thinking way, right? And that person thinks that's their opinion. It's not objective. And that's where we go wrong. We try as humans to make sense of the world. We objectively title and categorize things into sides and into titles and into, good and bad, evil and suffering. What is meant by evil and suffering? What does this mean? And it's not objective. And that's where we come to find that the best answer and the best definition of all definitions is nearness to God is going to forever and always be good. And distance from God, no matter your external circumstances, like, if I have the best car, the best clothes, but I'm far from God, I'm distant from God, I don't know who my God is, and I don't have that connection with my God, I don't believe in God, then that is bad. That is in essence and in ultimateness bad. And here there's this freedom and essentially this liberation from the shackles of worldly material possessions defining us, worldly material possessions owning us and telling us this is your worth, this is what your worth is as much as how many cars you have, your worth is as much as how beautiful you are, your worth is how much of a good body you have. All of these varying definitions and understandings are essentially what have made society in shambles, and no one knows where to look, where to turn. Everyone is very confused and people fill these voids with different things. And why look there when we have our deen and our God, our ilah telling us this is what you should use as your measurement. This is the ultimate test and the ultimate scale that you can test yourself against. So therefore, if I am struck, I don't know what the word is, but if we are therefore struck with an adversity and an atrocity, an external material one in the form of wealth, in the form of fame, in the form of beauty, in the form of money, there's so many examples. When I'm afflicted with these, that doesn't mean that I'm khalas and I'm doomed. That doesn't write me off, and that doesn't write my value off, and that doesn't write my chance of happiness off. And I think that's essentially what society has done and continues to do, is we write off people and their experiences as being just bad or being just good. And that's where I think so many of there's so many problems that has come with this, that, like I said, the wealthiest of the wealthiest people with the saddest and the saddest of hearts, and the complete opposite for those living in it with nothing, but they are the happiest and most content people in their hearts. And so I think if anything you can take away from today's chat, from today's session, is reshifting our focus on what is good and what is bad, and reshifting our definitions, and reshifting our understanding of what is good and what is bad. And again, just to keep reminding, never, neglecting the responsibility and the duty to fight for basic human rights, to fight for injustices and resist injustices. The two are they're cohesive and they work together. They are not separate and they are not mutually exclusive. So if I, on the one hand, have this firm understanding of goodness, which is nearness to Allah, and badness, which is distance and furtherness, and what's the word? Distance from Allah. But also having believed that and having that as my foundation, I still fight and I still resist and I still do everything in my physical power to go against a system or to go against a clear injustice happening in front of my face. That is cohesive. They work together. And like I said, the danger comes when we tend to focus on one and neglect the other. When I focus on one and neglect the other. If I just focus on this idea of being close to Allah and only doing that, only focusing on that, completely, then there will be problems that arise because, well, there wouldn't be problems, right? Because essentially, if you do and you want to be close to Allah, you will look to Allah and His Prophet, and you will look at the way that the Prophet ﷺ manifested his goodness and his closeness to Allah. So actually, it's a perfect fitting cycle, because if I am close to Allah, and if I am close to the Quran and what Allah has told me, and my the examples of our predecessors and our forefathers in Islam, then I will inherently be one of the strongest people to fight against injustice, one of the strongest people to be an ally to those in need. So actually, hearing and, if you hear people say, or people mentioning, taqwa Allah or have faith in Allah and make dua, I know I get quite disheartened when I hear that, because I'm a very stubborn individual and I like things done, and I like to get things done as soon as I see it, and I'm very impatient, right? I know for me, it's very hard to do that. But actually knowing and if you understand what is meant by taqwa Allah, and what you understand by the meaning of have faith in God, it will actually not be a form of disheartenment, but rather a form of empowerment, because you will be going and resisting in whatever way and whatever form, and with the fuel of Allah and for the sake of Allah. And what better fuel to have? What better source of energy? What better source of compass to have other than that, right? Because like I said, if your goals are in places, if your success lies within worldly matters, then you're going to be disappointed again and again and again. If your success and your validation lies within political achievements, and that's it, you will be let down and you will be disheartened through and through. If your justification and validation lies within humans and people's approval, people's acceptance of you, people's acknowledgements of you, you will be let down therein and there again every single time. So let your validation, let your justice, let your acknowledgement lie within Allah. Lie within the eyes of Allah, that you know Allah sees and you know Allah hears and you know Allah is writing down and is taking note. Let that be the solace that pulls you closer to fight against injustice and nothing else. Because like I said, if we put our results in the world, in the dunya, we will be let down by it, because it's never going to fulfill us, and it's never going to give us the right type of just contentment and justification and validation that we are seeking. So therefore, kind of to wrap up and make sure that we have understood this concept, we need to turn our focus, turn our hearts to Allah, and turn our limbs to what we can do in this dunya. And I know it's really disheartening now and listening to the news and seeing what's going on, but we can change, and there is agency that lies within every single one of us, and we do have the power to help in where we can help, and that is helping, right? And I can talk about this forever, but unfortunately we're going to have to wrap up the show now. It has been an absolute pleasure doing this book review, and I really hope that any of the listeners, anybody listening, has benefited, has enjoyed listening to this book review. And kind of no-brainer, if you haven't already, do purchase this book, read it, because it is a timeless book filled with timeless wisdom and will help you through every journey of your life. Again, I just wanted to kind of let everybody know, if you're not, me and my brother are fundraising for Human Relief Foundation, and the link is in one of our lives. Do make sure to check that out. And thank you so much for listening, and I see you guys later, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Helping you fast through the whole month of Ramadan. This is Ramadan 87.9 FM.